Hey guys, and welcome to this week's podcast. This week we wanted to talk a little bit about running and revival, because there seems to be a sense across the world that God is up to something, not just in Asbury, but even here in Pretoria and in other places in our country. And it really seems like it's a season, it's a time where God is up to something. And it's really exciting to be alive at such a time as this. And would love to just chat a little bit about some of the things that are going on.
So, what has running got to do with revival?
That is a good question. Running to do with revival. How do running and revival connect?
They both start with R.
Yes.
Helpful.
They're both exciting. Okay, not for everyone. Not everyone likes running. But for those who do like running, maybe there's something in that. They're life-giving. They're good for you. Okay, seriously though, Paul writes in 1 Timothy 4 that it's physical training is of some benefit, but spiritual training or godliness is of a lot of benefit, because both for this present age and the age to come. I think there's a little bit of a metaphor there of spiritual training in the sense of running or any kind of physical activity. There's some training there. And godliness is a spiritual training that's something of value for what's to come.
So you ran 94 something kilometers last weekend.
Yeah, not quite 90. I think it was 93 point something, but close enough.
Can we just say 94?
We can.
Okay. And I ran 4.
It
on
was over
average.
3 days though. It wasn't like all in one go. It was kind of spaced out. You had time to recover and all those kind of things. So.
Sure. So I would say that running comes more naturally to you than it does to me. Fair?
Be fair.
Okay, so I've struggled to get into running, and I've had some things go wrong with my body. So what has helped you to get yourself to that place where it's not so difficult for you to get up and put your shoes on and go for a run?
I think so. I think it's doing the same thing again and again over time kind of shapes or forms you. So, and not limited to running, but any kind of, let's call it fitness, right? The first time that you want to go and exercise and you have a goal, you want to be fit, and those first few sessions or those times that you go out are really tough. But you need a little bit of resilience and perseverance, a rhythm to be able to push through and to keep going. And the more that you do that, the easier it becomes. So I think it's process over time that has taken me to a place where, yeah, as you could say, maybe running comes a little easier.
And do you think that it relates the same from physical fitness to spiritual formation, like that scripture that you shared with us?
Yeah, I think I think the more that we go on a faith journey, we figure out how much of a correlation there is between the spiritual and the physical, or the spiritual, or let's call it the supernatural and the physical. Often we think, that they're so disconnected, but really the supernatural is more real. If you think about it, the supernatural is more real than the natural is. I mean, the natural is what we know, but the supernatural is eternal. So think of it this way. We are supernatural beings that have a temporary natural existence. But for us, that's all we know. So it seems the most real thing, but actually the supernatural is the most real thing.
And even the word supernatural is people are afraid of.
Yeah, because you think of like poltergeist and exorcisms and demons.
Ghostbusters.
Ghostbusters, all those kind of things. Okay, but back to your question, the correlation between the physical and natural. I think God uses a lot of things in the natural to teach us about the supernatural. And probably that's what Paul's getting at in his letter to Timothy in 1 Timothy 4, about physical or natural fitness and godliness or spiritual training. And yes, spiritual formation is what we would call it, or discipleship or apprenticeship. I suppose if you compare it to the natural, philosophy has given us the idea that human beings are kind of brains on a stick. I think, therefore I am. Mm-hmm. So discipleship is often limited to knowledge and less to practice. And knowledge doesn't shape you or form you, but practice does. And it's the same with discipleship. In spiritual formation, we can know a lot of theology, but unless we actually do the practices, that just knowing the theology doesn't shape us. So just knowing about running or knowing the technicalities of what you need to do about running doesn't get you any fitter. But when you actually start to apply the things that you know you should do, that's when you begin to be formed.
So that's what I'm doing wrong. I've just figured it out.
you know all about it.
Yes, I will
Because
research
you're
running.
a top 5 on the
Yes.
Enneagram, so you like to know everything about that there is to know about everything.
Yes, so I'll read blogs about how to run better and how to hold your body, and then I sit on the couch
And think about how you
and
should
think
do all
about
these
how I
things.
should do it, and then I don't actually go for a run. Jokes, I did run twice this week.
That's
but,
amazing.
But I find that I do that, and maybe I do it in my spiritual walk too, where you know that you know what you're supposed to do, but you don't do it even though you know it's good for you.
And probably because a lot of the time we are looking for the emotions or the experience, you know. So why don't you want to go for a run? Well, it's tough and it's hard work and it's more comfortable to sit on the couch. And the spiritual, it can be the same. It can be, some Sundays it can be tough to go to church. You had a busy week and you wake up Sunday morning like, oh, I really don't feel like going to church.
The kids are fighting.
Or it's winter morning, you wake up early and you're like, I don't feel like getting out of bed to do my devotional time or read my Bible or to spend time in prayer. Some of those things, they can be hard, tough, because perhaps we're looking for the experience, like, you know, and there's not always a great experience in spiritual practices.
And we lead. You say we lead with I don't feel like it. You know, so
Yes.
we let our emotions and our situation
Emotions be in
control
the driver's seat.
instead of knowing. I know that going for a run is good for me. I get endorphins, which helps my mood. I get it's forming something in my body. It's hopefully making me live longer. I hope. Sometimes I feel like it's killing me, but I mean, that's why I do. That's why I go for a run.
Yes.
So, and likewise with spiritual formation, we shouldn't let our emotions or our situation, our circumstances dictate to us.
Yeah, and often
journey of
in
spiritual
life we
formation.
often or let our emotions be the leading factor and the thing that we base our decisions off. Not to say that emotions are not important. I mean, we know that they are, but they are, as we've said before, they are instructors and not indicators. So they should give us they are indicators and not instructors. So they should give you an indication or a sign that something's going on, but not be the instructor by which you live your life.
Yeah.
So, I mean, sometimes spiritual practices bring a great experience. You experience the presence of God and the joy and the peace and everything that He brings. But there's a lot of background noise today. There's much going on here today. So if you can hear all kinds of weird sounds and
Our
things.
children are on holiday?
They are. That's what it is. It's school holiday. So there's a whole lot going on.
Thinking a bomb was going off, but maybe not.
No, just our kids. Just our kids.
Okay.
Where were we? Experience, yeah. So sometimes spiritual experiences can be great. Like you go for a run and you feel great. But it's not always there. I think the way to view it is you kind of immerse yourself in these practices, and over time they form you and they take you on they actually help shape your desires and the things that you long for in life. So the more that you run, the more you like running. The more that you do spiritual practices, the more that you become to like and enjoy those things. Yeah.
And ultimately, the difference between spiritual practices and physical, going for a run, is that we should be focused on who we are becoming. So the spiritual formation is who we're becoming over time, right?
Yes.
So
yes.
And that becoming, the who we are becoming, the usness of us, is eternal.
Yes.
So that's why it's important. So what are spiritual formation things that are good for us?
Well, we've been talking a lot about worship lately. So worship is not just arriving on Sundays to sing songs, but worship is a lifestyle. It's a heart attitude, a posture. There is, of course, the individual and the corporate worship. So there's our times together with Jesus, and the coming together. That's part of worship. But worship is so. A lot of the spiritual practices or disciplines, we can call it, shape our hearts towards worship of God. So to be really practical about it, yes, there's a coming together on Sundays. That's a spiritual practice. It's a gathering, coming together to worship. Reading our Bibles. It's one of the primary ways that God speaks to us. Spending time in prayer. And that's not giving God a list of things that we want, but really it's communicating with Him in conversation with God. So worship, prayer, Bible reading, giving, and fasting, and silence and solitude. And there's a long list of things that we can do.
And so we can share some resources in the comments on places to find more information on spiritual practices. There's a lot of really cool content available. But the goal, the whole thing we were talking about, running and revival. And so as we go on the journey of spiritual formation, spiritual practices, revival starts to happen in us.
Yes,
And that's where it needs to happen.
That's exactly it. It's renewal or revival. It begins with us in the change, like personally, the change in your heart. It's not like God just shows up somewhere random and does something.
In a burning bush.
If you look through the history, yes, he does. But if we look through the history of revivals in the church, often what goes before is a desire for God, which starts with a personal heart devotion and a heart that's hungry and desiring for God. So if we want to see revival, then it has to begin in our hearts with a renewal.
And as we are formed and changed, people start to, we become attractive
yes.
to people.
Yeah.
People start to see a transformation in us, and they start to ask questions around that. And then there's opportunity to share the gospel.
Yeah, I mean, this week in our staff time, we read out of Psalm 40, and the psalmist writes about being stuck in a pit of desperation, and God hears the psalmist's cry, reaches down and picks him out of the mud and puts him onto a rock. And then he begins to sing, and people see the singing and begin to fear the Lord, which means they have a reverence for God. So, in the same way as we reach out to God, God intercedes or gets a hold of us in our life, puts us on a rock, we begin to sing, people see that. So, exactly what you're saying. It becomes something beautiful as you see a response to Jesus. Yeah. Hey, well, it is coming up to Easter. We're just 1 week away. And in church history, Easter has become is a key component of the Christian calendar and something that we celebrate and we have expectation towards, and we're looking forward for everything that is to come. So I want to invite you, if you're in the city, or even if you're not, and you can join us online this Easter. We're going to have a worship evening on Friday the 7th. It is the 7th, Friday the 7th, and then Sunday the 9th. Just a great morning together, celebrating and worshiping.
And my encouragement is to come with an expectation to encounter God. So with everything, whatever you do, coming to church, or even listening to a podcast, or a conversation with a friend, or during your prayer time, have an expectation for God to show up. And so as we look forward to Easter, we build this expectation in us, and we see that actually, when we do that, we want to lean into our relationship with God.
I think that's so key, what you say about the expectation, but at the same time, there's a tension not to have our expectations of what we want God to do to be the...
Expect God, not expect...
Yes, so there's the expectancy is God is going to do something, whatever it is, but it's not like, I'm expecting God that you're going to do X, Y, Z.
Yes.
So we live with the expectancy, but our expectations are not the driving force behind that. Yeah. Very cool.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much for joining us, and we will catch you on the next podcast.
And then all the kids will be back at school, and there won't be so much background noise and all those kind of things. And we will be back, hopefully, in our usual studio. So we will catch you again in 2 weeks' time. Thanks for joining us.
I thought a child was going to walk right into us right now, but he didn't. So I lost my train of thought.
We nearly had a guest speaker.
Nearly had a guest.
Here on the podcast.